For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Tabi Madiba. Joining me today is author and travel writer Kate Turkington, here to discuss her book, Yes, Really Alive. You are well known for your wonderful career in broadcasting, but I'm sure many people don't know about your early years. Please tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Oh my word, it's so long ago I can hardly remember. No, that's not true. I actually was born in London, in England, and I grew up for a little while there, and then came World War II. And World War II, many people don't know, but what happened, you know, we were told the Nazis, Hitler was coming to invade England, and so the British government, and it's amazing because they normally don't manage to organise anything very well, but in 4.5 days, 1.5 million children were evacuated out of England into the countryside because our parents had been told the Germans are coming, the Nazis are coming, you're going to be bombed, you're going to be killed. So we were sent away from our parents. I was 4, my sister was 6, into the countryside. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know who we were going to. Our parents didn't know where we were going. So I think that's how and where I started my travelling career, and how I learned to be very independent and take care of myself and live in the moment. I'm a great believer of living in the moment.
As you've just told us about how you and your sister were separated from your family, can you tell us how you were reunited again?
When we were evacuated, my sister, who was very dramatic, claimed that we went off to the misty, moisty fens of England, on the east coast of England, and because there were 2 of us, and we'd been told that we mustn't be separated, we stood there clutching hot little hands on the train platform all day because nobody would choose us. But eventually we got chosen. Eventually my mother and father, 6 months later, my dad got a job out of London and we were reunited with our family. And you know what's so interesting? I have a superb memory. I have no memory for names, but I have a superb memory of that 6 months I was evacuated. I don't remember a thing. And a psychiatrist would say it's classic blockout, I'm sure.
And how and when did your first love for travelling occur?
Well, I think that, you know, I had to put up with it, I had to get on with it. But I started travelling quite young. I went to stay with a French family in France, didn't know where I was going, didn't know who I was going to. And that's been the pattern of so much of my travelling. I've gone to places, I'm not quite sure I'm going. I don't know if somebody's going to meet me. I don't know who I'm going to meet when I get there. I don't know what mountain there's going to be. But I have such faith in people, and also a belief that everything will come right, and it has, so far.
And tell us about how you first fell in love in Sweden.
Sweden was one of the places I first went to. I had a Swedish grandfather who was the captain of a sailing ship. You're much too young to remember what sailing ships are. But they're the ones that had the sails. There were no motors. They took you where the wind took you. And he had run away from his home, aged 12, from a very small island near Sweden, to be a cabin boy. And long story short, he eventually ended up in London many moons later, where he met my grandmother, who was a Yorkshire witch. And let me tell you about Yorkshire witches. Witches in England and Europe aren't like African witches. They're good people. They're the wise women. They give the herbs. They deliver the babies. They're respected members of the community. So he met my grandmother, who was a Yorkshire witch, got married, settled in London, and that was it. Had 5 children, and I was a grandchild.
In addition to South Africa, you have lived in and visited other parts of Africa. Tell us about those experiences.
Oh, I've been all over Africa. In fact, I'm off to West Africa very shortly, in 2 or 3 weeks from when we're speaking. But I went to live in Nigeria when I was 21 years old. I had just been married. I had just graduated from university. My husband had graduated a year before me, and the first job he got was in Nigeria. We didn't even know where Nigeria was. We had to look it up on the map. He went out the year before me. I joined him a year later, and it was very, very remote. The village I lived in, we were the only non-Nigerians, apart from a couple of missionaries and the people in the leper colony. And when my son was born in a tiny, tiny, tiny mission hospital, he was the only non-Nigerian baby in the hospital. They didn't even put a thing round his wrist. So I know he's mine. No electricity, no running water, but wonderful nuns, medical missionaries of Mary. And I think I was their first UK mother they'd ever had in the hospital. So it was quite historic for me, and I had wonderful Nigerian friends.
And briefly tell us how you met with Malcolm and how you ended up getting married.
Oh, I was working in a pub as a student. You know, people sometimes wrongly have the idea that if you're a student in Europe or whatever, you lead a pampered, sheltered life. No, you don't. Like in South Africa, we lived on bursaries, we lived on scholarships, we lived on grants, which covered term time, but they didn't cover vacations, so we had to work during our vacations. So I worked as a ward orderly in a hospital, I worked planting seeds, I worked on a farm, and I worked in a pub in London. And I hadn't been working there very long. I was about 18 years old. And my husband, who was a student, came in with a bunch of students, walked up to the bar, said to me, "I'm going to marry you." I said, "Don't be ridiculous. Of course you're not going to marry me." And I married him.
And can you tell us why you and Malcolm divorced?
I met somebody else. I had been married very happily for 7 years. I had 2 small children. I was, let me think, no, I was 25. No, I'd been happily married for about 5 years. And another young, dashing man came into my life. He had been seconded to the British Army in Nigeria. So he was a captain in the British Army. And I was selling tickets, would you believe, for an amateur dramatic show. And there I am sitting at the table selling tickets, and he comes up to me. I think he might have had a jar or two or a dop or two. He walked up to me, he said, "I'm going to marry you." I said, "I'm married, I've got 2 young children, of course you're not going to marry me." I married him.
Briefly talk to us about the process you had to go through regarding the recognition of foreign divorce when you were said to get married with Alan, your second husband.
Oh my word, what happened was eventually my first husband, Malcolm, who became my very best friend. He's my youngest daughter's, my South African daughter with all South African daughter's godfather. He became my best friend. He came on holiday with us, but he went and became a district commissioner in what was then Rhodesia. Actually ended up as a member of Robert Mugabe's cabinet, but that's another story. And so when my divorce finally came through, Rhodesia, as it was then, had declared UDI, Universal Declaration of Independence. So the British government didn't recognise it. Obviously, they'd suddenly broken away from the British colonies, as it was then. So my divorce wasn't recognised in the UK. So we thought, what should we do? There were 3 couples in our position. We were victims of red tape. One couple came to South Africa and got married on the ship by the ship's captain. You know, if you get married on a ship by the ship's captain, it's legal. The second couple took their case to the House of Lords, cost them a lot of money and lost. And Alan and I thought, because he was Irish, what should we do? The Irish always do everything the British don't want them to do. They've been mortal enemies for years. So we went to Ireland and they recognised the divorce, and we got married in Ireland. Easy.
And in one of your letters that you wrote to Ireland, you said it sounded like a fairy book romance, that 2 men are in love with one girl. She loves the one foolishly, irresponsibly and selfishly, and loves the other from loyalty and gratitude. So do you think it was a wise decision to choose your lover?
Oh, that's such a good question. Was it a wise decision? during our lives, and I'm very old, we are taking decisions the whole time. Sometimes we make the right decision, sometimes we make the wrong decision, but very often we only know this in retrospect. I've made lots of great decisions, I've made some foolish ones, but I do not regret one thing about my life. And you know, I'm often asked, of all the people you've ever interviewed, from the Beatles to the Dalai Lama to royalty to chiefs to presidents, who do you remember best? And I remember the words, funnily enough, I don't remember his name, of an Anglican chaplain from Port Elizabeth who counselled dying people. And he said the saddest thing he'd ever heard was the number of people who, as they died, said, I wish I'd done more with my life. I'm not one of those people. I will not die saying, if only, what if? Do it, go for it. You've only got one life. And you know something, I do know the meaning of life. I am very confident of myself about the meaning of life. To me, the meaning of life is life, and to love and to be loved. That's the meaning of life.
Okay, and what were your reasons to keep love letters that you wrote to your lovers and the ones that wrote to you?
I have no idea what. I don't keep things. You asked me why I've kept love letters and letters. I don't keep things. I'm not a hoarder. I actually throw things out and then wish I hadn't thrown them out. But I kept, apart from the husband's letters, I kept 4 love letters, and one of them is in this drawer behind me. I could show it to you. I won't go into it in detail, but it's written on that thin blue airmail letter that we used to write letters on many moons ago. And it starts off, my darling Kate, I can't live without you. And it goes on like this for 3 anguished pages. And it finally ends, I'm going to take you away from Alan, the name of my second husband. I'm going to take you away from Alan. We're going to run away together and we will live happily ever after, signed Alex. I have no idea who Alex is. No idea.
And can you briefly tell us how Pepe, your dog, died and how it made you feel? Because you said it brought through the pains of loved ones that were once present and absent in your life.
You know, I hate the term losing people, you know, and I don't also like the expression passed on. I mean, where are you passing on to, for goodness sake? People die. And I say to my grandchildren, when I die, so and so and so and so, I have 9 grandchildren, all of whom live in Johannesburg, ranging from 6 to 29, and I talk about death to them. And they all argue, I want that picture, and I want this thing, and I want that thing. But we've all had people who have died, and then people will say, you've lost somebody. You don't lose people. They're in your mind, they're in your heart, they're in your dreams. So sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a lover, sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it is an animal. You know, we love our animals. Maybe it's a cat, a budgiega, or a dog. I had a wonderful little dog, and I've had many dogs since, and I have rescue dogs now. But when Malcolm first went to Nigeria and I was left behind in the UK for a year while I was finishing my degree, he had given me this little dog, a little poodle. And I suppose in a way it became my emotional prop and stay because my husband wasn't there. When I went to Nigeria, nobody had ever seen a poodle before. I mean, this is decades ago. And one night he got out from the compound and he was taken by a witch doctor. And I use the term advisedly, witch doctor. This was a very evil juju man. It wasn't a Sangoma or a Sanusi. It wasn't, or like the wise women I was telling you about. This was somebody who cut up things for Muti. And he took my little dog and he cut him up. I just hope that whatever the medicine was, it did somebody some good.
And last week the country had embarked on Child Protection Week. So what advice can you give to individuals or children who suffer abuse from the hands of their fathers or family members like your friend, Renetta?
Oh, that's almost impossible. question to answer. What advice do I give to abused children? Let's start the other end first. Let's start with parents. All I can say to parents is, you give your children the best education you can afford and the most love you can give them. Then they're on their own. They must go out into the world on their own. If you've any money, don't leave your money to kids. They must now fend for themselves. So that's advice to parents. To children who've been abused, I think just to say to yourself that not everybody's like this, that maybe, you know, I met the wrong people at the wrong time, but somewhere in my life I'm going to meet somebody who loves me, who cares for me, and if I don't, I will find somebody and I will love for them. I will love them and I will care for them. Very difficult, very, very difficult, but we've all got love in our hearts. So it's there, share it.
And lastly, please reflect on the aging process. Are there any good things about getting old?
There's lots of things about getting old. The first thing is, the most important thing is, when you're young, you want everybody to like you and you want to make an impression. When you're old, you don't give a damn. You don't give a damn. So you're very confident in who you are. You know what you're good at, so you're not frightened to say, I'm very good at this, I can do this. Conversely, you also know what you can't do and what you're bad at. I can't play the piano and I hate cooking. So you come to terms with yourself, and you really do, and this sounds so Facebook cheesy, but you really do become wiser. You do become much, much wiser, and you learn to accept. You learn to accept. One of my best friends said to me some years ago, you know, Kate, the trouble with you is you think everybody thinks like you and everybody behaves like you do, and they don't. So get a grip. Just accept people for what they are. That doesn't mean you can't try and change them and give them advice and say, go and take a trip, go and find a job, go and do something. But be accepting, and one learns to be accepting.
Thanks very much for your time. That was author and travel writer Kate Turkington speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about her book, Yes, Really Alive.